is the Rangers Journal Night.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Rangers Journal. My name is Billy Rankin. I am joined by quite a large panel this evening. Right next to me, Dean has come round to visit. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good too, and
Good.
welcome to the castle of this place. Also joined this evening by Kai. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very good, mate. It's been a while since we've been on together, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. You too. And Ricky, you're joining us again tonight. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Billy. Looking forward to a good wee chat and reminiscence.
That's good. And Scotty, how are you yourself, mate?
Absolutely fine, mate. Thanks for having me on last minute.
Oh, you're welcome. I wasn't going to mention last minute, but you're welcome to come on anyway. Right, so the topic I sent out this week was, it started off with me thinking of who the biggest Rangers flops, but to me that sounded too easy because you can just pick players that ended up being rubbish, i.e. Austin Stad as the first one that came to mind. So what I wanted to do is kind of refine it a little bit and have it be players that you were expecting to do well or hoping to do well for whatever reason, which you have to explain to us when you're going through your choices. But that was the stop putting call. Let's see who we choose first, Paul. So we're going to go around the team and talk about our favourite, or I don't know if you call it favourite, but players that let us down, broke our hearts for whatever reason. So, Kai, I'm going to come to you first of all. With that premise of players that you were hoping that would be going to do well, tell us who your first choice is.
So, before I tell you my first choice, it goes along with the manager at the time as well. So, the first one I've got is a signing from the Paul Le Guen era. And I'm sure I was with many of the fans, I'd be so excited for Paul Le Guen to come in. He had such a good track record. They'd done brilliant things at Lyon. Like this was going to be what set us apart and took us to the next level. But obviously that didn't work out. So to go along with that, the player I've picked is Libor Sionko. So it was obviously Czech winger came in, had bags of pace, and I didn't actually realise this until looking back on it, but Vladimir Smicer pulled out of the 2006 Czech Republic World Cup squad. Sionko was called up. He was not only called up as a replacement, he actually got some minutes at the World Cup as well. So obviously, with a built to the hype at the time, I just remember seeing him and thinking, right-footed right winger, took the ball to the byline all the time, would always just burst past players. He scored in his debut at Motherwell. I mean, it actually popped up in, I think it was Rangers Archives today. It was a really lucky goal, but I just thought he was going to be great and exactly what we needed. He was a manager we needed at the time, a player we needed at the time, and I've got kind of some notes. He obviously came in a free transfer as well, so nothing paid for him. Just picked up a lot of kind of niggly injuries, didn't play that much. Paul Le Guen obviously gone by the January, so he was only here for a year. They ended up going to Copenhagen and then Sparta Prague, and he actually ended, I didn't realise he had this many caps, but he ended his career with 41 international caps and 8 international goals. And I just felt like he should have done so much more for us. I thought after the first time I seen him, this is the guy, this is the right winger. And I was just disappointed time and time again. And like I say, it was a really scrappy goal, the one against Motherwell. It's not exactly what you want for your first goal. So that, I've always got that full kind of era in the back of my mind, and I've got that Rangers top with Sionko 14 on the back of it. I have that still in my mum's house. So that's how kind of hyped up I was for this, and the man let me down, and then he was away within a year, and that was the end of Paul Le Guen and then the Libor Sionko. So Libor Sionko was the first choice for me.
It was a dark time in general. Dean, do you remember Sionko playing for us or signing or anything Kai was saying there?
Aye, remember it really well, like what Kai was saying about the World Cup and things like that. We all thought he was going to come in and absolutely smash it, and it was far from it, to be fair. And I think it was maybe just a sort of, you look at Paul Le Guen's signings, don't you? And there was a few that we all had these high expectations of, and as Kai said, high expectations of Paul Le Guen coming in, and we all thought we were going to be kings of Europe and things like that. And yeah, it was just a disaster from the start, I think.
Ricky, what's your recollections?
Well, he played in that era of Rangers where things just didn't in 2012 up into the Gerrard sort of a period, Rangers were plucking at straws with players, at managers. There was no continuity. I do remember him, but yeah, I tend to agree with Kai. I don't really remember him doing much on the pitch. Le Guin wasn't a great era for us. I think we did back him. Was it Carlos Pena again? I think that was one of the players he did at the time. Again, came in with a lot of pedigree and done nothing for Rangers. But I think, when he played with his international team, he was a good player. And he was a good player, I suppose, but just not the right player at the right time, playing for a bad Rangers team, I think, in a bad setup. It wasn't the right period for him.
I'll make a little bit of a not a rule, but the last person I come to talk about a player, can they maybe be a little bit of a devil's advocate? So, Scotty, could you at any level give a glowing report on Sionko?
I think I'm maybe going to struggle with that one, to be honest with you, Billy. There's maybe one player I could get a glowing reference to, but he's not been mentioned yet. Libor Sionko was, I don't know how to put it, a goal-scoring winger, I would say. I think that was maybe his strongest attribute for me, was his eye for goal. He got himself into good positions. Unfortunately, though, he struggled in the physical aspect of Scottish football. He's not the first, he's not going to be the last to struggle with that. So relatively, was it Rapid Vienna we got him from, if I remember rightly? So he came from a good club with a decent pedigree at the time. For me, it was just one of them things that he couldn't settle in the country. I mean, you see it up into the country constantly. I'm trying to be positive. That's what I would say about him. Is he wasn't one for finding a needle in a haystack. He wasn't one for picking a pass. Wasn't great physically, but he did have an eye for goal, and he did make some decent timed runs into the box, I would say.
Fair enough. Kai, I think we're not doing room 101, but I certainly think if we were, that was a player that we could easily put into that bracket. So thank you for your first suggestion. I'm going to move on to Ricky now. So who's the first player you've picked, Ricky, to go?
Okay, so it may be a bit controversial because some people may, but I've selected Tore Andre Flo. Purely because of his price. I mean, he came in from Chelsea, had a good couple of seasons at Chelsea. It was a good goal scorer doing in the English First Division at the time, or was it the Premiership? Sorry, and he get bombed out of that Chelsea team prior to us bringing him in because of which is Hasselbank, and I think it was Goodmanson. I think it was the two. So he was in the substitute bench. So he became available, and Dick Advocaat bought him in 2000 for £12 million. Still a record today, I think, in Scottish football. And he was punted by Alex McLeish in 2002. Now, he came in and he scored in his debut in the 5-1 win against Celtic. So he started pretty well. Scored 18 goals in his first 30 games, and 22 goals in the second season over 42 games. But at the end of that period, we sold him on to Sunderland for £6.75 million. So we lost £5 million plus all his wages. We paid him for the 2 years. Now, for me at the time, I can remember when the Advocaat announced he was coming in, he was the Haaland of today, the big Norwegian blonde hair who was scoring for fun down at Chelsea. Now, I've given you sort of stats here of the goals in his first and his second season. But with the amount of chances in the team that he played in that Advocaat era, for only score that amount of goals, we're getting that kind of goal rate from Dessers, and Dessers has got his, they've got people who got his critics, shall they say. This is a kind of goal sort of a return that Tore Andre Flo was giving us then for £12 million. I just thought it was just a massive, massive disappointment. And to move him on 2 years later for a £5 million loss, I thought it was a big disappointment for me, because I was expecting this guy to just Marco Negri, 33 goals in 5 months for us. I expected a lot more for a £12 million player, so that's why he got my vote as somebody I was really looking forward to, and he disappointed.
It's interesting you mentioned Dessers, because that's what came to my mind there as well. But Kai, do you remember much of Tore Andre Flo? Do you remember him signing, or do you remember any of the games?
I think he's very much a victim of circumstance, isn't he? Like, every time people say he was overrated, underrated, it's one of those debates. But the fact is, obviously, Ricky said we paid the 12 million for him. Did we get value for money for that? Probably not. I think it was like 20 overall. It was like 29 goals in 53 games. But again, for that kind of money coming here from Chelsea, you're probably expecting a bit more. And again, obviously, as Ricky said as well, we kind of sold him for half of what we paid. He's the type of player, Seafood, that come in a free transfer. You'd be talking about one of the best free signings in Rangers history. But because that kind of money was paid for him, he's seen as a flop, he is. But then if you just look at purely the numbers and kind of remember his performances, like he was a good player for Rangers. He was just never a £12 million player, which again, it's not his fault. So I think he's very much a victim of circumstance, but I fully understand why Ricky's kind of put him on this list.
Scotty, I'll come to you next. I'll say first of all, just for me, he just never seemed the right type of fit for us. It was a strange signing even at the time for me.
Torrey Andrew Flo was, how do I put it? I don't want to say a successful signing, but it definitely wasn't the worst. Everybody thinks because of this 13 million price tag that it was he's probably the biggest flop in Scottish football because of that price tag, but he wasn't. As Ricky quite rightly pointed out, we got X amount of money back from. So the net spend was probably value for money, to be honest with you. I will admit, though, he did look better at Chelsea prior to signing. I watched a lot of Chelsea at the time. It was a good Chelsea team to watch. I get why we paid the money. So I'm justifying why Rangers paid that. They wanted to make a statement signing. It was one of the leading players in the English Premier League at the time. It was almost like you were rolling back the years under Souness, wasn't it, when you were signing the English League's kind of best players, because that's what it was. He was that good a striker. And getting the money back that we did for Sunderland isn't a bad return, to be brutally honest with you, Billy, I think. Flo did okay. Unfortunately, he's just got that price tag still slapped on him to this day. Even in the day's transfer market, when you've got all these young boys in England, is it Amari Kellyman went to Chelsea the other week for £18 million. I don't even know who that boy is, but he's an Aston Villa youth, apparently. Do you know what I mean? So It kind of shows you the state of the finances in the Scottish game when Torrey Andrew Flo was signed for 13 million quid and he's still a record transfer. And it didn't actually do a bad job, to be honest with you.
Well, I think Scotty there has done the kind of devil's advocate side for you, so feel free to pile on if you want, but also feel free to defend them.
For me, when he signed the same time as Ronald Libor, and we'd been beaten 6-2 by them already that season, and obviously without Michael Moles, so we needed something to happen. And I think going by the money we spent and in terms of availability, back then the way that transfers were, it was the best signing we probably could have made for that amount of money. But when you're looking across the city and they sign Larsson for 650,000 and he goes on and gets 50 odd goals, you're thinking we spent £12 million in 50 odd games, we want to maybe getting 60 goals, sort of like what Kai said there. So it is one of them. But when he came into that Rangers side, the competition with Martin O'Neill's Celtic side was already there. In my opinion, that's the best Celtic side I've ever seen. So he was kind of up against it because he wasn't getting those goals. We're wanting obviously to beat them and they're winning. So all of that to take into consideration with the way that obviously fans thought of him, because he came in and rejuvenated Celtic, let's be honest, and we spent £12 million on our striker, so we're wanting him to be the one that's going to be beating this great Celtic side. So yeah, it's a really, really, really difficult one for everybody, I think.
The transfer fee, Ricky, for me is the reason why I agree with you. Just it was too much for, well, what could we do with 12 million to spend on a striker today? I mean, it would be, it's no wonder it's sticking a millstone round Flo's neck.
Well,
thanks for that suggestion. Thanks for that, Ricky. I'm going to move on to you, Dean. Who's your choice?
Basile Boli.
Explain why.
So Basile scored the winning goal in that corrupt Marseille side, and he comes in with even just the name as a kid, Basile Boli. It was just everybody in Scotland was like in a frenzy because we're signing this, Champions League winning player, and he comes in, and I mean, he didn't last at Rangers long, and the money that we spent was just, I know we can't get every transfer right, but that's one of the few transfers that you want to get right, because of where he came from, and us at the time wanting to obviously go that step further and win in Europe, and signing players around about that time, Laudrup, Gaza, we were signing big names around about that time, and he was as big a name, as big a household name anyway, in Scotland for obviously a Scottish team to sign. So for me, I was just really, really disappointed that he was unable to really be able to get any second year in Scotland. And if I remember, his disciplinary record was pretty shambolic. I think we maybe paid about £3 million, but back then was obviously quite a lot of money. Maybe it was more than that. I've not got the figures in front of me. If somebody can put that in the comments, I'd be delighted. But yeah, he was just very, very disappointing for me, given where he came from and what we spent.
It's crazy that summer we signed Laudrup, and that was kind of under the radar, and how good Laudrup went on to be. But Ricky, can I come to you? What was your recollection of him previously at Marseille, and then were you excited about him coming to Rangers?
I mean, you threw me under the bus, Billy. I don't actually really remember much of Basile Boli. I do remember coming in with a fee. I do remember the kind of Marseille connection. But if I'm honest with you, I don't really, so yeah, Dean's are probably absolutely right. Probably a flop. Would you reckon it was what, $3.5 million he came in for? Now, it doesn't stick in my mind. I definitely remember the name, but I don't really recall him playing or wearing the jersey or playing any sort of a consistently good football. I generally just don't recall the guy that much, no.
Scotty, do you got much memories of him? I was at the Man United friendly, so I did get to see him. And what stuck out for me is how loud he was on the park, but he was also kind of slow. But what do you remember?
I don't remember much of Basile Boli, to be honest with you, Billy. But talking from his pedigree, I mean, you can't sign a European Cup winner, not have your heart broken if he's not as great as what you think. You know what I mean? I think that's about 3 years before my time, to be honest with you, Billy. So I'm struggling to have some proper input on Basile Boli for you. But in terms of his pedigree, I would imagine you would have expected a wee bit more than what we got.
Kai, can you make any devil's advocate arguments for him? I guess maybe you're at that age where you won't remember much of him either.
Unfortunately, not me. I can only kind of really echo what Scotty said. Like, if you're bringing in someone in of that level and of that pedigree, and they don't get spoken about the same way like Gaza and Laudrup do these days, and then it's obviously not worked out. But apologies, apart from that, I can't offer much insight on Basile Boli and his time at Rangers.
I think I was about 14 or something at the time, so I've not got great memories of it, but I do remember being there at his first game. Scotty, can I come to you over? I've not got your players written down, but have you got a player that comes to mind for this topic?
A player that I was disappointed by?
Yeah.
Julien Rodriguez under Alex McLeish.
Okay.
He came in at a time when I think it was just after we sold Sotirios Kyriakos, if I'm right, or he just left the club. And we were struggling for money at the time. He played next to the boy Jean-Pierre Fanfan. We'd signed him on a free transfer from PSG. And then we paid money to bring this centre half in who had won a league with Monaco, ever present in the Champions League, hundreds of Champions League, great pedigree at Champions League level. He's won 2 French leagues and a French Cup. He came with that kind of stature. He was big, he was tall, he was strong, and then he couldn't hit a ball. Honestly, see, when I remember watching him away at Tynecastle, and it was like watching Bambi on ice, Billy. It was horrendous. He broke my heart that day. I think we could beat 2-1 if I remember rightly. I remember kind of my years in what tap we were, if that makes any sense. So that was the year we were good in the Champions League, but absolutely horrible in the league. We finished third behind Tarts. We got to the last 16 with Rodriguez at the back, if I remember. He came in and I was like, I just looked at him and see if he was to sign for Rangers now, and I didn't know anything about him. It would still get me excited because just his height and his physicality, and a guy of that pedigree coming from a big club in Monaco, and he must have had, if I'm being kind to him, about 6 out of 10 every week. Like, he wasn't really up to much. He was constantly error prone, and he was a complete waste of money. So he really disappointed me.
Fair enough, mate. I'm going to make a comment on Fan because I remember when he signed, one of my Celtic-minded mates was laughing at him because he was voted PSG's worst ever player, and we just signed him. So I don't know how accurate that was, but he certainly didn't improve his reputation when it came to us. Kai, do you remember Rodriguez?
I remember Rodriguez really well. Actually, I also remember him being really slow, like to Davy Weir levels. Like he couldn't turn, and it just didn't. I'm sure I remember seeing him for Monaco and like kind of wondering how we'd got this guy, and then it just didn't look like the same player. They sent his twin brother up here and stuck him on the park, and that's what we were stuck with. And obviously going on the fan thing as well, that must be one of the most underwhelming and disappointing centre half partnerships that we've had in years. Because that's good pedigree. That's Monaco and PSG centre halves coming in, and I'm just being absolute duds. Like Scotty said, I remember him being quite error prone. He wasn't great on the ball. He was quite slow, and I just remember thinking, we obviously like got Purcell from Monaco, and he just looked like he was quality, and I expected that from Rodriguez when he came in, like that kind of level, and he never had it. It looked as if he was someone we'd bought for Morton instead of Monaco. Just a massive disappointment.
And Dean, what's your recollections of him?
I remember when he was like out injured and suspended and stuff, and it was we weren't performing well because Rodriguez wasn't in the side and things like that, and then like everybody was, he's coming back, and I remember everybody getting excited, he's coming back for suspension or injury, and I always just remember thinking, what are folk getting excited about? Like I must be not seeing what they're seeing, and I think as well because we had signed Purcell. We were all expecting the same sort of type of impact he was going to have, and I just never ever, materialised to be anything other than, to even say that he was mediocre at times. I think that's a massive compliment. So he was just never somebody that, like using an example of Davy Weir's pace, but Davy Weir could get away with being slow. But because Davy Weir was incredibly intelligent, but sorry, I can't because Scotty's in.
He's got a big cheesy grin on his face.
I can't help it because everything he's saying is exactly what I think about his player. Like, he came in with this big, massive, great pedigree, and you get a buzz from signing for you now, and then you see him play football, and you're like, oh Christ, how's that happened? You're just like, you know what I mean?
Total players can get away with being slow and but be quick up there, and he was neither.
Right. I've got to say that he's not somebody I remember a lot about. It was more fan was the kind of big joke of that time. Ricky, can you make any defence against that choice?
Defence? Not really. He certainly couldn't do any defence either. No, I think it was the beginning of the end of McLeish. I think that particular season, the guy was he was just so undependable. He's a kind of standard of kind of centre half, which we kind of probably got at the moment. And he played in a decent sort of a squad, as I should imagine. At that last sort of a year for. I mean, McLeish come off a triple, he then get a double. And then the year of his demise was like these players that were introduced. I think the last a particular one season didn't end, and we punted him and we moved him on. But yeah, he was an awful football player. But I can't really show any positive towards him at all.
Well, Kai, I think that's we'll move on from him. But I agree with this choice that you've got for your second choice tonight, because I thought we were getting Beckenbauer when he signed. So who's your next?
Sticking with the Paul Le Guen era, and anyone that played Football Manager around the time, Doug's actually just pointed him out, Karl Svensson. I was so disappointed because you could always sign him in Football Manager. Every single time you signed him, he was amazing. and he was supposed to be one of the big like up and coming centre halves in the world, never mind Europe. And he looked like he'd never stepped foot in a football park before. Like he was scared of the ball. He was hopeless. Like honestly hopeless. And I don't know what it is that all these scouts are. I don't know if I know they obviously get like fans of clubs to do the stats for their players. I don't know if somebody's just been at it and just thought, this guy's one of the worst players I've ever seen, but I'm going to make out he's this wonder kid that's going to end up being amazing. But even like obviously spoke about Sionko had been called up to the Czech Republic squad. Karl Svensson was in the Sweden squad. He never got on, but as a young player, he was in that squad. And then he got injured. And I just remember Scotty had obviously said about Julien Rodriguez being Bambi on ice. Honestly, I think Svensson was exactly the same. Just honestly looked like he'd never played on grass before or kicked a ball. Or no player had ever ran at him. I was so disappointed because I was a massive Football Manager fan at the time. And it's one of those signings you always make and you're like, oh my God, Rangers are signing somebody that I've signed in Football Manager for years. This is amazing. And I just built it up so much. And then I remember being at Ibrox and my dad just looking at me because I'd obviously been bumming him up to my dad. This guy's going to be amazing. Next big thing. Going to be our next big sale. Going to sell this boy for 30 million like I done in FM. And then the first time he kind of got the ball and somebody ran at him, I was like, nah, it's not the same player. It really, really can't be the same player. And obviously going on the Football Manager thing and how big a fan I was of the game at the time and how excited I was. I think it's one of the biggest letdowns I've ever had footballing-wise.
Thank you for that suggestion then, mate. I think was the first game of the season against Motherwell. I was at a game early on this season, and obviously you're full of this expectation that we're going to go on and dominate Europe. And honestly, the first couple of times they got the ball, the whole stadium just like a wind was taking out them. They're like, oh, what is this? But Ricky, what's your recollections of Svensson?
Well, again, it's the Leguini, isn't it? And ironically, he came in on the back of Rodriguez leaving. so we had two seasons of just, I've said time and time again here that for any decent team, you need a good spine. And for that kind of 2 seasons there, we never really had a strong enough spine for us to be competitive in Scottish football. Hence why Le Guin only lasted the season, I think it was, before he was punted as well. Wrong players. I mean, the guys obviously had pedigree. I can't remember the money he came in for, but I think we were all looking for an upgrade and certainly a decent player because he came with the name. But yeah, he was non-existent really, to the extent that I don't really remember seeing him much on the football pitch. I don't think he played that much. I mean, they didn't persevere with him, did he? If I remember, says me, I think he was put onto the bench for most of his latter period of that season, I think. So yeah, he wasn't great.
Scotty, what's your recollections?
To quote only an excuse for back in the day under Chick Young, I've seen a tougher Swedish meatball in IKEA. The guy was absolutely woeful, man. Terrible player. Absolutely terrible player. I remember seeing after Le Guin get a bag and Ian Durant took the game away to Dunfermline. He played in that one and he was at fault for 2 goals. A 3-2 defeat. We're 3-0 down at half time at East End Park. And then Walter came in and he put him next to Davy Weir. And I thought, right, well, if there's anybody that's going to get a tune out of this guy, it'll be Davy Weir on the park. And I think he got 1 appearance. And then Ehielk was brought in and he was bombed out, never to be seen again. When he came in, I was a bit like, I can get on board with this. I was obviously a hell of a lot younger at the time, but I was a bit excited about it, like a bit interested to see where we were going to go under Paul Le Guin, and then very similar feeling to Rodriguez, except I hadn't got my hopes up as high. I just actually remember wishing at the time that he was better than Rodriguez, than he wasn't. Like, Doug's actually come in there with a transfer fee that was £900,000. That's in euros, obviously. But nah, Bali, I struggle to get. The only positive I could say is that maybe if he'd have got longer with Davy Weir, we might have got something out of him.
Kai, can I come back to you for a minute? Am I right in saying is he maybe more like a modern day centre half rather than one we were expecting back then?
it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be exactly that. But obviously he left. He had a wee bit of injury issues as well. Like it's not just down to his ability. I don't think how little he played, but he did. He went to Cannes after he left us, and he played 7 games in 2 years. So kind of shows how bad his injury was. And then he was supposed to be this modern day centre half that would come out into midfield with the ball, and again, he looks more scared of the ball than anything. So wasn't exactly what he was supposed to be.
You get any recollection, Dean?
Not very good, but I think, where he was, 21-ish when he signed. And what did you just say, he went to Canada, Kai?
Can?
Oh, Canada in France. Is that where he ended up? Like, I never heard of him ever again. After he left Rangers, so that kind of shows you the quality of the player that he wasn't. And I didn't mean that as a criticism to people that, come to Rangers and, go into the wilderness somewhere, but he was a big name around Europe as the world, as Kai had said, in the Swedish squad and things like that. So it wasn't as if he was, not even on people's minds or on their lips, but he was just, I couldn't even tell you any better after us. So that pretty much sums it up for me.
Well, I did a kind of quick Google before when you were talking, Kai, to see where he ended up, and I'm actually not even able to find him on Google. I'm sure I've just spelt his name wrong, but all it's coming up is this American actor with the same name. So, yeah, I don't think he went on and had a glittering career elsewhere. We'll move on because I'm really excited about this choice, Ricky. So, who's your next player?
Right. So I went for Joey Barton.
I wonder why.
So Mark Robinson brought him in 2016 based on what was a brilliant season down in England in the Championship with Burnley. He was in the team in the Championship season, and he was voted Burnley's Player of the Year. Now, prior to that, he made his mark at City as a youngster and had a really good career at City. At the particular time, he was up there as one of the best youngsters in English football. So you could also argue one of the best youngsters in world football. Although City weren't the same team at the time, don't get me wrong, but he was in that sort of ilk. He was getting spoken about all the time. Moved on to Newcastle and then to Queen's Park Rangers. We kind of mixed sort of reviews down there. And then he had his famous or infamous sort of a loan spell down in Marseille where he had that interview where he spoke with a kind of French accent, which was quite funny to see. But in all of his football career, he's been in oodles and oodles of trouble. He's done time in prison. He's been banned for this, banned for that. And after he left us, he got banned for betting. But when he came to us, I was actually quite hopeful that we were going to get the Joey Barton that we brought up from Burnley. Because in 2016, we were going through that kind of transitional period, trying to get back to where we needed to be. And I thought he'd be great. I really did. So he came in to us and he made 8 appearances. Came and he said, and it was well documented in the press, and the Celtic fans loved him for this, didn't they? He's going to come up and be the best player in Scottish football history, all that kind of stuff. All that rubbish was thrown into the media. So he played 8 games for us, but Rangers suspended him in September because of a training incident involving Halliday. Don't really know exactly what went on, but I just know he was suspended. And then they released him on the 16th of November, 3 months into his 2-year contract. And then he went, I can't remember where he went after that, but his whole football career has just been dogged with controversy. Why we ever even brought him to Rangers, I'm not too sure, because to come and play for an institution like that, surely we must have known this was going to erupt when he got to Rangers, especially with the stick he was going to take from Celtic fans. And then obviously the legacy of going into management, and we all know the history. He's just a bad egg, isn't he? And for me, that he's got to be one of the ultimate worst signings we brought to our club. He's done nothing but brought shame to our club, Joey Barton.
I think that that player epitomises what I was thinking of with this podcast, because I was over the moon when there's pictures of him getting taken from the airport in a chauffeur kind of car, isn't there? What do you remember, Dean?
I pretty much everything that Ricky said there. He done a Mike Beale. You know, he sold us this this gift that he was bringing to our club, that he was going to revolutionise our club, and yeah, it was the complete and utter opposite. And you know, for somebody that was, you know, in and around England team, getting capped, can't remember how many caps he got.
We only got the one.
In his early, sorry,
just got the one.
Was it just the one? But you know, at that time, and to be fair, in that time when he was coming through, he was competing against Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, the Tal. So he was, you know, tough competition, and he was a really good youngster. Let's not say any less. But as I said, come to Rangers, and you know, I'm going to own the midfield in an old firm and things like that. You know, and something that we've been starved of, and he's going to come in and be this player. And then he just, as I said, he done a McBeal. He sold us something that was never going to come to fruition. So that's my memory of him.
Kai, if I can come to you, stats wise, and kind of looking at his career the previous season, why wasn't he a success? I mean, he was coming from a similar quality league, I guess, and he was a player of the season. So what went wrong?
I've honestly no idea. I mean, I feel like it's one of those signings you're like, how could you not have been excited about it at the time? The kind of career he'd had before, like obviously Dino said in about the England setup, even just being thought about when they had that good a midfield shows how good a player you were. Winning Player of the Year, been in the team of the season, a league like the Championship, when there's obviously so many teams, so many players, and you're considered the best of the best, and then you come up here, and I don't even know if it would have been as bad if he didn't say all the stuff he said. Like, I'm sure one of his quotes was he's going to walk it up here. Like, he's going to walk Scottish football. And at the time, you're maybe like, do you know what? You fancy yourself, fair enough. But if you're going to do that, you need to perform on the park. And he turned up to an old firm and get bullied by Scott Brown. Like, pardon my French, but it was Scott Brown's bitch. And you can't say what he said and then get bullied off of Scott Brown. I mean, you can't do that. And again, obviously the stuff with Andy Halliday as well. Like, you come up here as some kind of English football hard man, and you're probably getting knocked about at training off of Andy Halliday. Like, if you're going to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk, and he never even get close to walking the walk. I don't know how it all went so badly. But when you look at it in hindsight, like Ricky said, you're not that surprised, given his history and the kind of personality he is. Obviously, what he's up to now. I know he's up in court for something or other. I'm not sure 100% the full story, but I think he's a guy that needs a lot of help, and he probably needed it at that time. And we weren't the club to help see him through all the issues that he had, because we obviously had enough issues ourselves. So in hindsight, you look at it and you go, well, obviously it didn't work. But like you say, Billy, when he had that season before, you're like, brilliant, getting the best centre mid in the Championship coming in. How can that go wrong? And then, obviously, what happened.
Scott, I'll come to you last. Remember the devil's advocate kind of side to the final comment on a player, if there's anything. But there was a comment, I think Paul just said in the comments, the players around him, is there a defence for him with that statement?
See, quickly going back to Dean's point, and like he couldn't get into England midfield because he was better. He wasn't like Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes and all that in front of him. I remember reading something for Joey Barton when he first broke through at Man City, and he says he was better than them all. That right there's your problem with Joey Barton. Believed his own hype for a young age and then flopped. Like, some good season, get me wrong, see why Rangers signed him. Ever present for Burnley, Player of the Year, Championship title winner. You're like, on paper, you're like, brilliant. He's talk the talk, couldn't walk the walk, get flung about in training off Andy Halliday and sent back down the road again. It's basically summed up Joey Barton's time in a Rangers jersey. He was a controversial, outspoken, I'm not going to call him a name right now, but because I know we don't do that here, but it's just flattered to deceive mostly. And I'll ask you, Billy, do you think that could have been down to Warburton not having a backbone when it came to play? Obviously, he got shipped out, but you need to look at man management and all this. Could a better manager have got his potential that year?
I think that's
Smith, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because Walter Smith, controlled Gascoigne, so he'd be able to control Barton. But yeah, there's definitely something about the Warburton thing, because I've read Barton's take on what happened, and he didn't seem to think that the training ground incident was anywhere near as bad as we're led to believe. And then the club didn't even let him walk out the front door. They shipped him out of the side door at the main stand, I think, as well. So it just didn't seem like it seemed a bit petty, really, the way he was getting treated. And I don't know if that was because there was other issues going on, and Warburton was able to use the Andy Halliday incident to get him out, but he just knew that it wasn't right for the club. But I go back to that old Firm game. Was it you that mentioned that, Kai? That was awful. Like, if ever you come crashing down to earth with a player you had so much hope for, that game was just embarrassing. And I don't know how many times he started again after that, but I wouldn't have wanted him playing any other games. But yeah, definitely, Scott, that Warburton didn't seem to he didn't like anybody giving him anything back. And I think if you're going to be the Rangers manager, you need a bigger backbone than that to start, because you want the good players come with big personalities. And I'm not saying he's the great player, but you need to be able to manage that. And I think Warburton showed more than once that he didn't. But anyway, Ricky, that was a great suggestion. Probably the one we talked the most about, actually. But Scotty, I know that you're unprepared, but have you got any other one you want to bring up? And Dean's got a final one at the end.
I've definitely got another one. Michael Ball.
Right.
Another one with an England cap. Was it $5.5 million we signed him for? Left back. Probably this is going to be harsh because he wasn't the worst player, but he was disappointing in terms of the hype that he signed. If that makes any sense, he signed as this future England left back. He'd already been in the squads, was running about. We signed him for Everton, I think it was. And then injuries and a lack of form hampered it. And then I even remember towards the end of his Rangers career, I think if he had played one more match under McLeish with the old Everton, another $5.5 million or something like that. Is that right? So
it was something like that, mate. It was along the lines of that. It's
not that he's a disappointment. I would say Michael Ball's maybe an unfortunate one that just didn't work out, to be honest with you, Billy. And it's a sadging because, well, do you know what I mean? It's quite difficult to put a spin on it. When he played all right, but he wasn't great, if you know what I mean. Was he worth the money? Probably not.
I think it is a shame, Dean, because I liked Michael Ball. It's more like you've seen what he could have been, but he never really did it.
Because he was brought in really for Newman to be challenged at left back position. Newman, I know, arguably one of the Rangers' best left back, if not the best left back, with a lot of fans. And Michael Ball comes in for the £6-ish million, and you're thinking that this is going to take us up another level again. And another signing that we've spent a lot of money on that I just got to say injuries and lack of form, which is a bit of a pie because coming from Everton and people in England raving about him, all the press around the signing, it was this like marquee signing, things like that. And yeah, I know that he was out injured for a long time, but even before his injury, he was, he wasn't a standout. And in that Rangers side, with a lot of standouts, we had a lot of good players of high caliber at that period of time, and we all thought that he was going to be, on par with them, and he just wasn't.
Kai, was he a football manager type signing as well?
I don't remember kind of playing it at that time, but the profile he kind of had coming from Everton and obviously been in and around England set up as well, he probably would have been. And it's disappointing, like you say, at the time you're hoping that if you're bringing someone into challenge, someone as good as Newman, you're thinking they're going to be kind of next level. And maybe if it wasn't for the injuries, he would have got there. We're never really going to know that, because I was just looked him up there, and he retired like 7 years after he left us, and he only played 59 more games in his whole career. So that kind of shows you how bad the injury issues were. And like Scotty said, it's a sad one, because there are players you bring in that you know have got potential and you know they've got ability, and they don't get the chance to show it. And it's tough. It's one of those ones you look at, obviously the situation with Rossiter as well. Like those players you bring in that are either in and about England, like youth setups, or they're spoken about as they're going to be future internationals, and then they don't get the chance. So we obviously lost a lot of money on him as well. Like we only sold him to PSV when he left for $500,000. Like $6.5 million is a lot of money to spend on any player at that time, never mind a left back. So if you're going to spend that much, the player needs to be spectacular, and he might have been. There's maybe a small chance it might have been a spectacular player, but he never get the chance to show it. So I think he's a really good one for this kind of category in this pod.
Ricky, if I can come to you, that one thing I remember is him fighting with Advocate when he gets substituted in the Old Firm game. But what's your memories of Ball?
Well, yeah, I think a little bit like Torandre Flo. He came in really for a big fee, £6.5 million. So straight away, we fans are expecting him to be our left back at that kind of cost. He did have a good pedigree coming from Everton. As well thought of down in England. So he came into a team, and we just expected him to sort of just sail in and be a big part of that team going forward. But it just didn't really happen. And I was going to mention in that Billy, the Old Firm game, and he was hooked, and he had that argument, and he swore at Advocate. And I don't really think his career at Ibrox recovered after that. Certainly not when Advocate was in tenure. As Scotty said, he wasn't the worst, but I just think it was that fee of £6.5 million. Arthur Newman competing with him. Arthur Newman was one of the best left backs we've had in recent times. So it wasn't easy to break into that team, but £6.5 million, I think, was his problem. It was hard for him to try and establish himself in a team with such a good sort of opposition in Arthur Newman.
Well, that's a good suggestion, Scotty. Is one I actually forgot about. It's not one that kind of came up on my radar. But we're going to go to a final one. So, Dean, who's your second choice?
Stephane Guivarch.
Can you justify that?
Yeah, Guivarch was the top scorer in the French league. Started every game apart from the final in France 98. Signed him. I think he scored 2 in his debut. I think we beat St Johnstone like 7-2 away. Scored, I'm pretty sure. And, you know, I think because we signed him from Newcastle, so Newcastle had signed him and then we signed him. He never really done anything at Newcastle, but it was all, you know, World Cup winning striker. you can't really get much better than that, albeit I don't think he played in the final, but part of that great France team, that squad, which is, you know, one of the best in my lifetime, put it that way. And he came and he was just, again, he just wasn't good for us. And when again, it was around about the time where we're just signing players for amounts of money, you're thinking, how did that even happen? And back then, you know, obviously the Advocates came in and, you know, we were winning and things like that. And one of the reasons why I went from is because, you know, we all, again, expected him to come in and be absolutely phenomenal, and he just was the complete opposite for me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Ricky, what's your recollection of him? First of all, in the France team, he's in the squad when they won the World Cup. You sign one of their strikers, you think we can't get this wrong.
Yeah, no, I do remember him for France. He was a great little player. He was like number 10, not so much an out-and-out striker, wasn't he? A nippy little player, good goal scorer. But when he played with us, he played with the Advocate era where we had a pool of about 42 players, 42 first-team players. So, again, maybe the wrong era for him. Was he getting enough time? I mean, strikers go through periods where they're not going to score, lack of confidence, whatever it may be. Sometimes you have to persevere to get the confidence up to give him a run in the team. And I just don't think he ever got that, from what I can remember, because there's no doubt that boy was a football player. You saw him in the world stage with France. He was a great player. And maybe we just had a squad that was just far too big, wrong time. I generally don't know, but there's no way that he should not have been scoring goals in the Scottish SPL.
Scotty, wrong time for you, or was the player just not good enough?
Probably echo what Ricky says there, Billy. It was definitely the wrong time. Am I right that he moved on to Newcastle after us? I think he did.
I knew Newcastle. I couldn't mind if we signed him from Newcastle or he went to Newcastle, but we signed him halfway through the season, if I recall correctly. And I'm pretty sure that was obviously it was after the World Cup. So I think we signed him like halfway through the season or something like that. It was back when obviously you could sign a player up until March. But I wasn't sure if it was Newcastle before us or after us, but
disappointing. All in, kind of probably put him in the same category as Michael Ball. I don't think he was a bad player. I think it was more the like Ricky says, the poorer players we had at the time. You had the likes of Jonathan Johansson, Rod Wallace. There's two really, really good Rangers strikers that you can name off the top of your head. You just Gabriel Amato was another one. I mean, there was quality up and down that squad that just made it hard to get into. And if you could probably do a separate pod on players that didn't make it in that team, but really should have made it, if that makes any sense for me, Billy. When he came on, he certainly made enough of an impression for me, but it was in patches. It wasn't consistent.
Right, Kyle, come to you for the final word on him. Do you remember him? Was this kind of when you first started watching the World Cup? Is that, I don't know if I've said that to you before.
This would have been, I think, a couple of years too early for me, mate. Like I vaguely remember Euro 2000, but the first World Cup I really remember is 2002 and watching that Brazil side. Obviously, I've heard everyone, like family members, my dad, just other fans talking about Guivarch and kind of what they expected and what they got, and obviously being disappointed. But like personally, I don't remember anything. I used to have like kind of old Rangers videos and stuff I would watch, and he's not a player I ever remember seeing pop up too much in them. So that was kind of the most I had at Rangers at that time. So I've not really got anything to add that anyone else hasn't said already.
No problem. Well, thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry, Scott, come on back in.
I've just done I was reading an article on TalkSport about him. Billy, he did sign for Newcastle, and when he came up, apparently he rediscovered his goal scoring touch and won a treble. Just thought I'd part in there.
So did 40 other players.
We probably could definitely do this episode again with 8 other players that fit the criteria, and because certainly in the comments there's been players mentioned that's not come up this evening, so we'll maybe do it again. But thank you everyone for your comments. Kai, thanks a lot for coming on. It's been good to be on with you.
It's a pleasure, mate. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really interesting topic. Loads of good comments and discussion as well. So I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Then Scott, thanks for coming in last minute.
No problem, mate. Thanks for having me. If we do another episode of this, I really want to speak about Bert Contam, and I've got a good rant lined up about that one.
We could just do a pod on him, one pod on him, I think, mate. So we'll do that next time. Ricky, sorry I'm mucking you about the times, but thanks for coming on again.
That's no problem, mate. Not a problem at all. I did have one other person myself that I was going to talk about, was Aaron Ramsey.
Well, I've seen his name mentioned a few times in the comments.
Yeah. Just purely because the cost, and £400,000 he was on at Juventus, and we were on paying a percentage of his wage. How much are we paying for him? 13 games, but that's probably another pod, isn't it? But thanks very much for tonight, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
No, I thought it was quite a good laugh, actually, better than more funny than I thought it was maybe going to be. But Dean, thanks for coming around to visit, and thanks for coming on the pod.
It's been a pleasure and privilege as always, man. Thank you guys.
And all that's left for me to say is, everybody, please tell your friends about us. Please like, subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the comments. And remember, every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.